Hello and welcome to Resilience and Relationships. I am so excited because we have somebody new joining us today. Not new to us, but new to you. So first, I am Stephanie Olson. I'm here with
Rebecca Saunders and
Jessica Anderson.
Yes. And Jessica is our marketing and content coordinator. And you have been with us for how many years, Jessica? Over 5?
Yeah, it'll be 6 years in February. So
wow,
a little over
that's
5.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So yeah, not new to us, new to you, but we are excited to be talking a little bit about the Lindsay Clancy case and really postpartum.
So today we're going to discuss the case of Lindsay Clancy. She is a Massachusetts mother. She's accused of killing her 3 children, 5-year-old Cora, 3-year-old Dawson, and 8-month-old Callan in January of 2023. The defense is arguing that she has been suffering from postpartum mental illness, including postpartum psychosis, and that she's not criminally responsible for her actions. The prosecution is disputing that explanation, and so now her mental health is at the center of this trial. Regardless of where you fall on the question of criminal responsibility, the case has brought postpartum mental health really into a conversation, and I think that we want to acknowledge that today. So we're not really going to be talking about as much of what's going on in the case rather than the conversation about postpartum mental health surrounding that. Rebecca, do you want to add to that?
I think you summarized that beautifully. There's a lot of controversy right now with the case, and so that's really not our heart today, but it has brought up some really interesting conversation.
You know, I think that what is interesting for some of us who remember Andrea Yates and that situation, it really brought postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis to the forefront of the conversation. But I think this case has been so interesting because there are so many, and probably in part because of social media and things like this, it has just been on fire with different sides of the conversation. So it's definitely an interesting case.
Yeah, and I think that these conversations need to happen. Of course, it's very unfortunate that this is what has kind of brought it up to a lot of people's attention. And we want to be very sensitive when we're talking about this. But I think that it is something that is worth a conversation because oftentimes things like postpartum depression are ignored until some kind of tragedy results from it.
So does somebody want to define postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis? I think that would be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So postpartum depression can include feelings of persistent sadness, anxiety, irritability, guilt, hopelessness, exhaustion, difficulty concentrating, difficulty bonding with the baby, thoughts of death or harming oneself or the baby. Postpartum psychosis is where that enters another realm where there's delusions, hallucinations, paranoia, confusion, mania, or extremely elevated mood, losing touch with reality, essentially. So there is a difference there. The postpartum depression is more those feelings of the hopelessness and maybe not bonding with the baby or the anxiety. And then the psychosis is when the hallucinations and the reality shifting really enters the chat. Wow, that was really millennial of me to say.
No, I think it's good. It could look different for so many people. It looks different for everybody. I heard that somebody said, and I know we're not going to go through each, side of the story, but I do think this is important. I heard somebody say that postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis doesn't really exist, but that it is just a cop out for lazy moms, parents who don't care, or, hey, now I've had this baby. I didn't really want this baby. And I will say that for my first baby, I experienced postpartum depression. It was really interesting because, first of all, I wanted her desperately. I mean, it was not that I didn't want a baby. I wanted a baby. We lost our first baby. And so I wanted that child. And I remember, first of all, the depression hitting and the guilt hitting from the depression because I thought, why am I feeling depressed? I should be happy. This should be a time in my life that I should be happy. And I felt so guilty about it. But I will tell you that, and this is just talk about vulnerability, but I remember two very specific instances. And I don't think I got to the point of true psychosis, but I remember once I was with her. I think I had just opened a gift that somebody gave me, and I had scissors in my hand because I was cutting the gift. And I remember thinking, you know how easy it would be to take these scissors and, God forbid. Also, I walked her every day. In her little buggy, and we always walked by a bridge. And I remember, what if I just dumped her? Would anyone notice? And it's horrifying thinking like that today, but I want to be vulnerable because that happens to so many people. And who talks about that? Who is going to say, yeah, I felt this way about my baby. And by the time Tess and Will were born, my doctor put me on medication and said, we're just going to keep you here. And so that made a big difference. But yeah, it's a real thing.
I remember, I have my one daughter, so I've only been through one pregnancy, one postpartum situation. I definitely suffered from postpartum depression, but I would say for me, the worst part was anxiety. Mine didn't reflect what I thought the definition of postpartum depression was. I was told postpartum depression, you're not going to bond with your baby. You might not feel love for your baby. And that was not what I felt. I felt such an extreme bond to my baby and such an extreme love for her that I found it really difficult to proceed with any normal life. I became almost borderline agoraphobic because I just didn't want to leave the house. It wasn't safe out there. If I stayed in my little 1-bedroom apartment in the living room that I had perfectly constructed for her, that was 100% baby proof, and I had my eyes on her at all times, then nothing bad could happen, right? And that was just what was infiltrating my mind all the time, is that something bad was going to happen. And I was always looking for that thing. And that is enough to make a person feel like they're being driven mad. And I dealt with that, I would say probably for the first full year of her life. Just being really strapped to my home because I was too scared to do anything with her on the off chance that something might happen. I was afraid to meet new people because what if this one person wants to harm my baby? Or the intrusive thoughts that Stephanie was talking about, where I'm like, well, what if I accidentally shake my baby all the way to death? Like shaken baby syndrome, so real. And what if I accidentally shake her, even though I wasn't shaking her ever, not even one time? But it was in my mind all the time that is something that I could do. I was capable of that. If other parents are capable, then I'm capable. So I was always worried that something was going to happen to her, or I was going to do something to her, even though that was never my intention and I wanted nothing bad to happen ever. So I think it can present in so many different ways, and it's just, it's stigmatized a little bit, because if you're a mother and you're talking about wanting to harm your baby in any way, your first thought is, what if they take my children? I don't actually want to harm my baby. I don't want my baby to be harmed. So but like the normal response would be to take my kid from me. And I understand that logically. I understand the normal response would be to remove the baby and take them to safety. So then you don't want to reach out and ask for help as often. You don't want to let people know what's going on in your mind because you don't want to lose your baby either. There's a huge myth that I think revolves a lot in postpartum depression and psychosis, that if somebody loves their baby, that they won't harm them. And so there, with Lindsay, tying it back to Lindsay, there is definitely a side of this argument where people are saying, she couldn't possibly have loved her children. And I think that that's something that we need to myth bust, because that's just not true. That's not how postpartum depression or psychosis works.
Yeah.
I do think that's a really important point. And we see that with all kinds of mental illnesses, right? I mean, you can very much love someone, and let's say you have an addiction that you're struggling with to a substance, right? You can very much love someone, and yet in pursuit of that substance that you're addicted to, you will hurt them or you'll put them in danger or whatever. And so it's not just exclusive to this, but I think across the board, when there is a problem going on, some kind of mental illness, addiction, whatever that is, then two things can be true at the same time, even though that's really hard for us to understand.
I think that is so true. And, Jessica, it's so interesting when you share that. I had a tremendous fear with my first as well. And so simultaneously thinking, oh my gosh, what if I did this? I would check on her every hour. Is she still breathing? I was so afraid of SIDS. I was so afraid of something happening to her. And so that is so interesting because I do think that there is this piece that people do not understand. Because why would you? I mean, why would you understand that? If you want a baby, you've never experienced this, you wouldn't think, well, yeah, that could happen. But it's just something happens to your body with the hormones and all of the things that are going on. And you don't want to tell anybody around you because they will consider you a danger or consider you. I mean, it's all of those things together.
I think it's really important to acknowledge too that every pregnancy is different. Every postpartum experience is different too. So even for the same person, you can have two wildly different experiences with different children. And that was the case for me. So with my oldest, after she was born, I developed postpartum OCD, which I didn't even know was a thing until I struggled with it. And similar to your experience, Jessica, I was very scared that something was going to hurt her. So when it was time for us to leave the hospital and go home, I was sobbing. I could not get in the car. I was so nervous. I'm like, we're going to get in a car wreck. She is going to get killed in a car wreck on the way home. And I was convinced, and I checked her buckles so many times. And then I thought, okay, that was crazy. What was that? And then it didn't stop happening. And that persisted for several months. That stairs were a trigger for me. I could not handle the idea of walking downstairs with her because I'm so clumsy and I'm going to drop her and she's going to die. That was everything in my world was, this is going to happen and she's going to die. And I'm too scared of it. With my son, it was not like that at all. It was just pure newborn bliss. And I went in expecting this is going to happen. It's going to be really hard. And then it wasn't. And for a little while, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop of okay, when am I going to start to get anxious again? And I didn't. And so I think it's one of those things where there are so many different factors that play into it, and you never really know what that experience is going to be like until you're there. And it's important to open up and talk about it because if you're a new mom going in and all you've ever heard is that this is going to be easy and positive and only the good things, which there are so many good things. But if that's the only side you've heard about, whenever you have that first anxiety-inducing experience or intrusive thought, you're thinking, I'm the only person that this has ever happened to. What is wrong with me?
I love that you brought up postpartum OCD as well, because I know for me especially, I confused a lot of my intrusive thoughts and my anxiety for mother's intuition. And I'm like, well, I must just be, really onto something here. Something's going to happen and I can feel it in the air. And so we're just going to stay home and stay safe. And so that might be a barrier, and somebody reaching out for help as well, as they're thinking that it's intuition. And part of it could be 100%. A mother is going to have the intuition to keep their baby safe all the time at all costs. But at what point is that crossing into depression, psychosis, OCD, things like that, where you might need to reach out and get some help?
That's such a good point.
So what would you, either one of you, tell a mom who is experiencing some sort of postpartum mental illness, whether it is depression, OCD, psychosis, whatever the case may be? What would you tell a mom who is experiencing this but is too afraid to say something?
It's a great question.
I think there's a lot of, different things help different people. But one thing that really helped me and made things a lot more manageable was to say it out loud. And so I would say, I need to check her car seat buckles again because I'm scared. But I've already checked them 5 times and I know that she's safe. And so I would just, and maybe I would still, it would be overwhelming and I would need to go in the back and check them again. But saying it out loud, it's something about hearing it of like, okay, I'm having a thought. I can see that this is an irrational thought, and having someone to share it with too. So I think the first thing to do, even before you have your baby, is identify who your support team is. So that is something where you may not know how you're going to need to lean on them, but who are the people that you can lean on and that you can be honest and vulnerable with. And if it's that kind of situation where maybe you're having an irrational thought or a fear, you can tell them, hey, I had this thought. And they are there 100% to support you. And I think that that is really good first step. What do you think, Jessica?
I love that. I love that you said saying it out loud too. I'm definitely somebody who's an auditory processor. So I actually, you'll find me talking to myself often at home because it's how I can get the information back into my brain in a way that I can then start to move through it and understand it a little bit better. If I let it just sit up there and I ruminate on it, that's when it becomes worse. So I love that you said that. I'm a big believer in saying anything out loud, even if you're alone in a room. And then, finding your support team, your support person, whether that be your parent or your partner or a best friend. I think another great resource is your OBGYN. I know for me personally, I had a really wonderful OBGYN. And she checked in with me regularly because I did struggle with my mental health pre-pregnancy. So it's only natural to assume that post-pregnancy, I might be dealing with some of that as well. So I did have a wonderful provider that checked in with me often. And I made a commitment to myself to be very honest with her, no matter what that feeling was. So I think that that's really important too, just making sure that you're committed to being honest with yourself first. But I also think journaling could be a really excellent way to work through some of those thoughts, writing them down, seeing them on paper, and recognizing that's not me, that's not the parent that I am. Processing that through journaling or writing, I think is a great tool to use. I love your answer. I wouldn't change anything about it. So
I couldn't agree more. And I want to ask you both this because I love what you said about your provider, Jessica. I too had a really great doctor, and I think that does make a big difference. What if though? Because I started to think about, I'll give you an example. This is not a postpartum example, but it is an example of maybe that wasn't the right person to talk to type thing. I had lost my first baby. I was 5 months pregnant. And so I had to actually deliver the baby in the hospital. I mean, it was just a really traumatic time. And of course, this was my first. And so we didn't know if I couldn't get pregnant. We didn't know what was going on. And it was just a very traumatic event, very scary. And I was talking to a friend of mine that I worked with, and I was sharing this, and she said, I completely understand what you're talking about. I have a cat who just passed away, so I get it. Now, let me just preface, I am an animal person and our fur babies are very important. And when we lose a fur baby, it is devastating. I lost one not that long ago, and it's painful. It is a family member. I will preface it to say that. But to compare an animal to your child is probably not the best thing to do when you're talking to a mom who lost a baby. And so what do you do if you share something with somebody that you do consider a strong support person and they don't understand, especially we're talking about something like postpartum, they don't understand, or they're not, well, if you're thinking like that, you are whatever the case may be. What do you do if you find somebody who you consider a strong support system, and their response is not perhaps the most trauma-informed response?
That's a really great question. I'm trying to think of how I want to answer that. For me personally, I'm incredibly direct. I might handle that a little different than somebody who's a little softer than I am. Um, I might actually look at someone and say, I'm really sorry about the loss of your cat, but that's just not helpful to me right now. So
I think I did say that, actually. I think I
would
was
be
like,
direct, and
are
I
you
would say that.
I would be too
comparing?
scared.
Yeah,
I
are
would
you
say that's not
comparing
very
your cat
helpful.
to my baby? I think I said something because, yeah, I'm the same way, Jessica.
I'm really direct.
In the moment, I would not. That's the kind of thing that I would say to myself later of like, I should have said this.
Rebecca's got such a sweetheart. She
Yeah.
could never.
I know.
It'll
And
be
then
in
she
the
was
brain,
not
though.
really my close friend after that. Like, this is not somebody I can go to communicate anything important.
Yeah.
I think something really important when you're talking about what's going on in your mind and, if you need help or whatever that looks like, I think it's important to check in with yourself and understand what you need from that conversation. So am I entering this conversation because I want advice? Am I entering this conversation because I want somebody to say they understand what I'm feeling and just sit with me through it? Am I entering this conversation because I want them to help me find a third party for some help? I think, that does place a lot of responsibility on the person asking for help to have that conversation with themselves first. So I don't want to say that's the only right way to do it, because sometimes we're just past that point where we can check in with ourselves. But if you're at a point where you can have that conversation before you go to your support person, I think that can help frame that conversation to more of what you need. And so you might go to them and say, I really need someone who understands what I'm feeling right now and to just sit with me through this emotion. And if they don't check that box for you, just say, thank you for your time, and go find somebody who will sit with you through that emotion. And if that isn't looking like your support person anymore, I'm a huge advocate for therapy. So I will always recommend to have a therapist or find a therapist. Because most of the time, and obviously nothing's ever 100%, but most of the time a therapist is going to be really good about meeting you where you're needing to be met. Rebecca, thoughts on that?
I agree with everything that you said. I was thinking about how whenever we talk to kids and we are talking about, if there's something happening, you need to tell someone. If they don't believe you, tell someone else. And that's a really simple answer, but it's not easy. Especially when you've been so vulnerable and it wasn't received well. But I think even when we're talking about like therapists and things, you can almost help set that interaction up for success by looking at that person's history. So like, is this a therapist who has specialized in helping postpartum moms? Is this someone who has spoken out maybe about their own experience? And almost doing a little bit of digging if you're able to ahead of time to find someone that has life experience to better understand you. That's not always an option, but if you can, that helps.
I think support groups are fantastic resources as well. And in this day and age of social media, am I going to recommend to somebody to go and, diary dump on social media? Probably not. But if you look on, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, X, I still call it Twitter. There a lot of times you can find communities of like-minded people and people going through similar things, and you can find support through those avenues as well, if that's something that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think knowing that you're not alone is honestly one of the biggest healing factors, just knowing that you're not going through that by yourself.
I do too. This episode of Resilience in Relationships is sponsored by the Set Me Free Project. At the Set Me Free Project, we believe that prevention is powerful. And through our Ready to Stand curriculum, we equip youth, parents, educators, and industry professionals of all kinds with the tools to recognize human trafficking, navigate digital spaces safely, and build healthy relationships before exploitation can occur. Our mission at the Set Me Free Project is to stop human trafficking before it starts by providing prevention education to all ages. Okay, so I have two questions. I want to talk about the signs and symptoms of both postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. And then what if you see this in someone else that you love? What do you do? So let's start with the signs of postpartum depression. Does someone want to talk about those?
Yeah, I can. So some of those symptoms are going to look like maybe persistent sadness, anxiety, irritability can be a sign of that. I know some people will say, man, I'm just so grouchy and, I can't stand when my husband enters the room or my dog comes in the room and he, wags his tail at me and it's just too much. So irritability can be a sign of that. It doesn't just mean that you're cranky. It can be a sign that something deeper is going on. Difficulty concentrating, exhaustion. So sleep patterns might change, whether that looks like insomnia or sleeping more excessively. And then thoughts of death, harming the baby or yourself, harming someone else. That can be signs of depression as well. When it enters psychosis, that's when the reality shift happens. So you're going to maybe start having hallucinations, hearing things or like auditory hallucinations, hearing things that aren't necessarily there with you, confusion, paranoia, delusions. You're really going to lose your sense of what's real and what's not real.
And I think it's important to put in perspective too. So according to research that was done in 2025, postpartum psychosis is about 0.2% of all deliveries. So 0.2% of babies that are born, their mom will suffer from postpartum psychosis. But postpartum depression is much more common. It happens in about 1 in 8 mothers.
I think it's also important to note too. I know that I mentioned I had mental health issues pre-pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And that can be an indicator that you are going to be higher risk for it after pregnancy, but it's not always. So somebody who's never struggled with mental illness in their life might think, well, I don't have to worry about postpartum depression because it's not ever something that I've ever had to deal with in my life before. So my chemistry is not going to be thrown off after. But that's not 100% true. With that giant hormonal shift that a woman goes through, everybody's going to react to that differently. And not having depression before is not an indicator that you might not go through it after having a baby as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's very similar to what am I trying to say? Diabetes. What's it called?
Gestational diabetes.
Gestational. Right? Very similar to gestational diabetes. You may never have had diabetes before, but then all of a sudden your body is a completely different container when you're pregnant.
Yes. Yeah. I have a close friend. She's literally the healthiest person that I know. I mean, makes everything from scratch at home. She has a dye-free house, all of the things. And she's taken care of her health really well her entire life. She's had 5 pregnancies. She's had gestational diabetes 5 times.
Oh, wow.
But she's never had diabetes other than that, just in her 5 pregnancies. So
yeah.
I think we underestimate just how much our bodies and brains go through during pregnancy and after. Like it changes everything.
Women are superheroes, in my opinion.
Oh my gosh.
Of the things that we go through to create life. Yes.
That's right. We are fabulous. I'm just going to say it. Okay. So that's postpartum depression. Let's talk about some of the symptoms of postpartum psychosis and then what to do if somebody you love is experiencing that.
Yeah. So postpartum psychosis is going to be more about the delusions, hallucinations, maybe mania or an extremely elevated mood. If postpartum depression ever becomes postpartum psychosis, that's an emergency. That is something where you want to seek help immediately. If you are a partner in that situation and you're recognizing that your person is going through that is an immediate emergency. Postpartum depression is, you can schedule your appointments. You can go into your scheduled appointments and you can track your meds and you can take more time healing that. Postpartum psychosis is more we need to get a handle on this right now.
Right. I actually had a family member who experienced postpartum psychosis, and fortunately also wanted babies, was, this was a life dream, and fortunately reached out. And I was one of the people that she reached out to, and we were able to immediately go to the emergency room. She actually went with her husband, but went to, got the help that she needed right away. And I think that is sometimes really scary for people experiencing this, because again, if I go to the emergency room, are they going to take my baby from me? And the truth is that if you are dealing with postpartum psychosis, it is something that does not last forever. And the medical community understands that and understands what it is and can help you with that. But yeah, that is definitely emergency. And I loved what you said, Rebecca, that putting it in perspective, how often does this happen? Not often, but we do know, and we hear the stories just like Lindsay Clancy, and we think, oh my gosh, this is something, Andrea Yates, we've got to, it doesn't happen very often. But I do think that one of the things that we also need to be mindful of is if we are seeing this in a family member, we don't want to leave them alone with the babies. We want to get extra help to support. And whether it's psychosis or depression, we want to get that extra support to help those moms in that situation, because it is stressful, it is overwhelming, it is scary, and you just don't know with psychosis what can happen at any given moment.
If someone tells you they don't feel safe around the child, you need to believe them, because it takes a lot to even say those words out loud. And so if they are to the point where they're feeling it, they're willing to verbalize it, take it seriously, even if it's something that takes you by surprise.
100%. I think if you're a partner in that situation, understanding your partner's normal and what that's going to look like if that deviates, because a big misconception about postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis is that it's going to be noticeable all the time to everybody around them. And that's just not true. Somebody can hold a job, they can hold a conversation, they can smile and laugh and go build a snowman with their kids, but they can do all of those things and then have 1 hour, 2 hours, or a short amount of time where they lose that touch with reality and they're not sure what's going on. So it might feel like, well, I'm safe to run out and go do these errands because she's been fine all day. If she has expressed that she doesn't feel safe alone with the children, like Rebecca said, that needs to be heard, understood, and listened to. I also think that just making sure that we're taking things off of the plates of new mothers is really important as well, because I personally remember as a new mom feeling like everything was on me, whether I had help or not. This was my baby. This was my journey with motherhood. This was my responsibility 100% of the time. And so I wasn't as willing to delegate or ask for help. Just because I felt like, well, she's mine. This is my responsibility. It doesn't matter how I'm feeling today. Moms go through this all the time. I need to just suck it up and I need to get through this day with her. That's not fair to me. That's not fair to, my daughter. And so I think rather than saying, how can I help you today, and asking a mom, I would say, I'm going to take your baby for 2 hours while you go take a nap.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that you haven't gotten to take a shower in the last couple of days. You haven't gotten to have any self-care, or me, who is showering with the baby in the car seat in the bathroom with me, 2 feet from the shower. I think it's really important to take things off of the plate of the mother and let her have some time to herself so that she can check in with herself. She can have those moments alone. She can have some time where it doesn't feel like the weight of everything is on her. I'm going to make dinner tonight. You go ahead and relax and just watch a show, watch your favorite show, go upstairs and do it in the bedroom. So you don't even have to hear if the baby's crying for a bottle. I'll take care of everything. If a mom can step up and take care of making the bottles or breastfeeding, making dinner for everybody else, showering and doing all the things, I think that a partner could also step into that role and take that on 100% so that she can get a break.
I think it's really important to know and understand what makes that particular mother anxious too. Because for some moms, having a break from baby is just what they need so they can get relaxed. And for me, it was not the case. If you take my baby into the other room, now I feel even worse because I can't see them and I don't know what's happening. And my anxiety was already so high that what would be a wonderful break for, someone else actually was extremely stressful to me. And I just wanted you to leave my house. And so I think that it's really important to understand hey, I want to do what is helpful to you. But to your point, Jessica, it's not helpful to come in and say, what do you need? Because I don't know what I need.
Right.
So maybe offering choices of, hey, would you like me to watch baby and make you some dinner while you take a nap? Or do you want to sit over there and hold baby and we can chat? Or what is fulfilling? I'm going to give you this option or this option. And that clears your brain to where you can actually choose. Because if you just ask, what do you want? There's way too many possibilities.
Oh, yeah. I think that's such good advice. I remember taking a shower was optional. And I don't think people always understand that. My husband said to me early on, and I really appreciate this. Looking back, I'm like, wow, that was really supportive and he's a great guy. But he said to me early on, just concentrate on getting one thing done a day. And that one thing could be taking a shower. That one thing could be, maybe taking the baby for a walk or whatever. And I remember that just that relief hearing that, because you feel like you have to be the superwoman and super mom and get all of this stuff done while you are nursing your baby or while you're just trying to recover, and you don't need to do that. And so yeah, that's all such good advice. And if you are on the other side, recognize that it can be so hard just to get through a day. Even if you are so happy you have this little baby, they are a lot of work. Those little people, as cute as they are a lot of work.
It's a 24-hour.
Especially when it's your first and you don't know what you're doing yet. Everything is overwhelming.
It really
It's
is.
a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job. And, truly the only people that can understand that are parents. And might I say, particularly mothers. I say dads get a lot of breaks, but I'm not, being negative towards dads because they're wonderful. I am very lucky to have a wonderful partner, a wonderful dad for my daughter. And he takes a lot off of my plate, but it still feels like a lot of the weight is on me. As a mother and a decision maker and the leader of this group, he tells everybody I'm the leader. He's like, I'm just going to do what she says. And as much as I love that, because I'm a little bit of a control freak and I want things to go my way, sometimes I'm like, could you please just decide what we're having for dinner? I cannot make another decision today. I am decision fatigued.
They don't understand that. I will tell you that right now. But you think as a mom, when you're traveling, for example, I have 3 kids, and when I would get ready for vacation, I would be packing my bag, all 3 of my kids' bags, while my husband packed his bag. And that is just the reality as a mom. We really do have more to do for the most part, I think, and there's just more. And so I hear what you're saying. I mean, I love my husband. Like I said, he's very supportive. He's a wonderful man, but he doesn't know what it's like to be a mom. It's different.
The mental load is very different as a mother than it is as a father. And, I don't know the mental load of a dad because I'm not one.
Right.
So I can't speak on behalf of all dads everywhere, but I can speak on behalf of moms, not all of them, but I would say most of them deal with a really heavy mental load. I mean, we're dealing with doctor's appointments and when do they need this shot versus this shot. And now I need to study this vaccine because I don't know anything about it. And I want to know what's going into my baby's body. And I need to study, the types of foods that they're going to eat. And, no matter what you do, you're doing it wrong.
Yes.
So,
absolutely.
As much as we talk about support other moms and no mom shaming, I would say that we're all pretty, not all of us, but a lot of us, go through a moment where we'll side eye a mom for a decision that she's made. And I really try to check myself on that. And I'm like, just because I wouldn't have made that decision doesn't mean it's not the right decision for that mom, for that child, for that family.
I always have said I will have a college fund for my child and a therapy fund for my child. So both of those things, because I knew I was going to screw up. So yes.
I tell my daughter all the time, I'm like, therapy is wonderful. And you also need somebody to talk to that's not mom. As much as I want you to come tell me absolutely everything, and you're more than welcome to, you're going to need somebody to go complain about me too. Like, you need somebody to talk about me too. Because I know I'm messing up. I know I'm not making every right decision out here,
I love it.
Yeah. So I always tell my daughter, you just let me know who your safe person is outside of me and we'll schedule some time.
As a mom of adult kids, one of the things I try to do is, especially if I see a mom with kids who are crying, or if they're, we take it so, oh my gosh, they're crying. They're disturbing everybody. This is horrible. And I always let them know, hey, been there. It's bothering you more than me, more than all of it. And so I think that's an important thing, we've all been there. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, 100%. That reminds me, I recently ran into an old friend from high school, and he was with his wife and their 1-year-old baby. And he has a little ADHD like I do. So we were, like gabbing away off to the side, and she's wrestling the baby. And I'm kind of recognizing this out of my peripheral vision, that she's struggling with this baby right now because he has a lot of energy, and it's a situation where he needs to be held. He can't just crawl off. He can't run into the crowd because we were in a busy area and we were outside. And she said, I'm just going to run over here and I'm going to get some food, because there were food trucks. And she gathers him up and she starts grabbing his things. And I look at her, I say, honey, can I hold your baby? Please let me hold your baby. And she's like, I would love that. Please hold the baby. And so I think Dad in the moment went, oh no, I should have probably been the first one to offer to hold the baby. But it wasn't me trying to shame him in any way.
No.
We were distracted. We were having a conversation. And it was just my mother's instinct out of the corner of my eye. I'm like, she needs a moment. And so I'm like, give me the baby. Go get your food. Go get your slushie. Take your time. I'll hold him. It's no big deal. But yeah, I think just kind of recognizing maybe what other mothers need, because a lot of times if you need something in that moment, or you feel like you would have needed something, they probably need that as well. And most of the time, they're not going to be offended if you reach out and you say, let me hold your baby, or let me help you with this, or let me go make a bottle for you. How many ounces do you need? Just stepping in where you can.
I love that.
And moments really do stick with you.
Yeah, they do.
Like, I still remember years ago, whenever I had a 2-year-old and a newborn, and I was like about to cry in the grocery store because I was so overwhelmed, and my 2-year-old wanted to run, and my newborn was crying, and this older woman was just like, hey, you're doing great. And that's it. I didn't know her. I never saw her again. Hey, you're doing great. And it's like, I am doing great.
I needed to hear that today. Yes.
But it sticks with you. Just having that little bit of support can make a big difference in your day.
I love that. Well, I think this was a fantastic conversation. I know it wasn't specifically about the Lindsay Clancy trial. And I think once there is a verdict and we know what's going to happen, we can kind of dive deep into our thoughts about what happened. But why don't go ahead and give, like, if you have a final thought, or whether it's about what's going on with Lindsay, or about postpartum depression and psychosis, OCD, or whatever the case may be. But Jessica, do you have a final thought on this?
Yeah. So I just want to say, without getting too personal on my bias or how I feel about the case, I want to say I think that Lindsay did everything right when she was going through what she was going through. She journaled about it. She logged her medication. She reached out for help. She called hotlines. She went to the hospital. She talked to her partner. She talked to her mom. And unfortunately, she was failed at multiple avenues. I think that, as we talked about earlier with Rebecca saying, with children, we we tell them, if you reach out for help and you don't get what you need, then keep going. I'm going to just reiterate that. I think that despite what's going on with the Lindsay Clancy case right now, if you're a mother and you are feeling postpartum depression, if you're feeling any of those symptoms, if you're just not feeling like yourself, but you can't label it, you don't know if this is depression, anxiety, postpartum OCD, if you are having distortions of reality, I think just making sure that you have your support person, go to them as needed, have your hotline numbers ready, have your doctor, have their number on speed dial if you can, whatever it takes to get yourself the help that you need. And if somebody doesn't say the right thing or turns you away, then keep going, because you're doing the right thing. You are doing the right thing for you. You're doing the right thing for your baby, for your family, and just hold that thought in the back of your head until you can get the help that you desperately need.
That's good. Thank you. Rebecca, final thoughts.
Yeah, my final thoughts are more of a message to the community at large. And, I've heard this phrase, I'm sure that you all have heard it too, all over social media, of everyone wants a village, but no one wants to be a villager. And I see a lot of truth in that. I think that we all need to find ways that we can be villagers. So what is something that you can do to help others around you? And how can we strengthen bonds as a community so that when someone is in crisis, they have somewhere to turn, or hopefully we can be such a strong community that we prevent a lot of. So I would encourage everyone listening to this to think of a few people in your life and how you can best support them, whether they're mothers of little babies or, just anyone. How can you be a support to others in your life?
That is really good. And I think too, remember, there are multiple ways to do that. Even if you don't live in the same area, you can send a gift card. You can send a DoorDash meal, whatever the case may be. There's ways to be a support. Even send a card saying, "Hey, I'm with you. Please call," or pick up the phone, call somebody. What do you need? There are so many ways to do that. And I think that's such a good point. It has to happen. Yeah.
I love Rebecca's statement, be a villager. I want to add to that by saying being a villager is not always convenient, and it's not always going to work into your schedule, but you might be the one person that decided to be a villager that day and to step out of convenience. And it might be the one thing that saves that person's life, or protects that baby in that moment, or just offers that support. So yeah, I'd say whether it's convenient or not, be a villager.
And it rarely is convenient.
Rarely
actually.
ever.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. Well, this was a great conversation. Thank you, both of you. I really appreciate it. I think this was good information. And Jessica, thanks for joining us. We're going to have to do this more often.
Here.
Yeah, let's make you a regular conversationist. Is that a word? Podcast.
Well, Stephanie, you know me. I can talk.
That's right. I like it. None of us have a problem with that. So,
That's true.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. We would love it if you are on YouTube, that you would like, subscribe, and comment. It really does help us with the algorithms. And if you are listening on a podcast, hey, wherever you're listening, give us 5 stars. We would love that. Just rate us is what I'm asking for. And let us know what you'd like to talk about. But for now, we appreciate you. Go and get some R&R. We'll see you next time. This episode of Resilience in Relationships is sponsored by the Set Me Free Project. At the Set Me Free Project, we believe that prevention is powerful. And through our Ready to Stand curriculum, we equip youth, parents, educators, and industry professionals of all kinds with the tools to recognize human trafficking, navigate digital spaces safely, and build healthy relationships before exploitation can occur. Our mission at the Set Me Free Project is to stop human trafficking before it starts by providing prevention education to all ages.